Hi everyone, my name is Lydia and together we'll be learning econometrics in this What I Wish They Had Taught Me About Econometrics series of videos. I know that for some of you econometrics might be a little bit of a nightmare, and I know there's also a lot of videos out there that can help you. However, with this series I wish I can provide you a few more insights about little things that you might have not thought of and that hopefully will make it also a lot easier for you to follow your lecturer or class teacher during your sessions or seminars. With that being said, before we jump into more serious topics, we need to know a little bit more about the jargon that we use in econometrics. That's why for the first topic, we're gonna split it into three little videos and we'll be talk about a few things to keep in mind, especially population model, types of data you could work with and how the population model language changes, and a bit more jargon. The first video is going to be a few things to keep in mind. The things you learn here hopefully will make it very easy for you to understand uh, straight away what your lecturer or class seminar is telling you. We'll move forward with types of data and more jargon into other videos. A few things to keep in mind. So any economic model that there is out there, it's a function. And econometrics tries to turn every economic model that there is out there into a function that is more easily understandable and interpretable. When you were learning math, usually you would see the expression y is equal to f of x, where x was some sort of factor that was affecting your y. There was some sort of relationship, either linear, quadratic, or a polynomial of a higher degree. And any values you plugged into x gave you some value for y. Well, economic models are not as simple where you have simply one x. You have functions that are more complicated where you have multiple x's, so x1, x2, x3, and so on. How does econometric does this conversion? Well, instead of calling it as like f of x1, x2, x3, and so on, there is a more generic way of writing it, which we also call it the population model, where we write y equals to beta 0 plus beta 1 x1 plus beta 2 x2, for instance. You can add as many betas and x's as you want, and ultimately the last element, very important, is the error term. Now, the error term in here, keep in mind, is everything else that you might have not accounted for in your model, meaning that is not x1 or x2, is included in here. And usually the kind of factors or variables, as we'll be always referring to them, could be either something that we are unable to observe or measure, think about innate ability, or other things that we simply did not include in our economic model because either they were not available to us or whether because we didn't think they were important enough for explaining a certain relationship we're interested in. So let's give a more concrete example because while this is the more generic model, most of the times you will be given context, you will be given actual variables that are real life applications to how different factors affect one another. So for the exercise sake, let's imagine that y variable is wages, x1 variable is education, and x2 variable, let's say, is IT knowledge. I'm going to stop at 2x variable, but keep in mind you can add as many other like variables as you wish. Using the generic model, making the conversion to the econometric model, this will look as wages equals to beta 0 plus beta 1, education plus beta 2 IT knowledge. And let's not forget, as usual, our error term. Now, what I want you to keep in mind is that it's very important that when you're given an actual exercise that is quite wordy, pay very close attention so that you can very uniquely identify what is your y variable, what is your x variable. Because it's very easy sometimes to just get tripped and mistake the y for the x, or misunderstanding the kind of relationships that you should be expecting to show into your econometric model. The other thing that you have to be aware of is that while we have this information, what is going to give us this like relation or some sort of a measure of what kind of relation exists between wages and education or wages and IT is included in these betas. So with any econometric method that you're going to use, be it simple OLS or IV or even more complicated methods later on, what is going to be the end game is finding numbers for beta 1, beta 2, beta null not as important, but especially beta 1 and beta 2 that make economic sense, that can be statistically reliable for whatever interpretations that we then give to those numbers. The last bit before we finish this video, I want you to be aware of the fact that sometimes you might see what we call the theoretical version of your econometric model, which is going to look exactly what we wrote right now. However, the moment that you estimate this model with whatever model or method it's available to you, then it's going to look slightly different. And I'm going to show you very quickly how. I'm gonna put in red so that you notice the first difference, but the beta 0, beta 1, and the beta 2 will have a hat on top. Remember, those were the things that we need to find after the estimation. So putting the hats on top of them is going to tell you, okay, now I have found a very explicit number that gives me that relationship. The other element that it's going to have a hat on it is also wages. And from now on, this wages hat is basically your predicted value of wages, which means that now that you have an explicit number beta null, beta 1, beta 2 hat, by plugging in values for education and IT knowledge, you can find a value for predicted wages based on that, or conditional on that education level and that IT knowledge. Also notice very carefully the error term, which we had been using at every point, is now no longer going to show. Keep in mind, it's very important in the estimated model, do not input the error term. You could be penalized if you write an estimated model and add the error term in the end. The reason for this will be more clear in the next video, but until then, keep in mind, this is how we're going to write econometric models, and this is what we need to know about theoretical and predicted values. See you in the next video.